Well, good morning, everyone. This is our first study of the Medium's book on a Sunday. Elmo just joined, so I'll pass it up to him. I'm just going to share the screen here. There you go. Take it away, Elmo.
Good morning. Thank you, João. I'm sorry, guys, I was just a little bit late. So we give continuation to the studies of Chapter 25 of the Spirit of the Medium's book. It's still at the topic of evocation. Close to end it, very close to end it. And again, this is a summary basically of everything that was already spoken about in the beginning of the chapter, and Kardec, especially in this book, always closes the chapter with questions placed to the spirit that basically goes over everything that he has spoken about and brings some examples of the topic of studies to clarify any questions that you may have, questions that he placed to the spirits. So now we stop on question 50 last time. Today we start the question 51. With the issue of evocations of living persons. And just to clarify, that means that can we evoke, and by evocation means request a spirit to come and have a dialogue or to bring a message from a spirit who is presently incarnated? And the answer is yes. Kardec, in the very beginning of the chapter, says you can evoke everybody, anyone at any time. And this, should we, is the question, right? And upon evoking, are they able to attend? Are they willing to attend? Are they permitted to attend? So those are questions that is covered in this chapter. And when it comes to an incarnated spirit, yes, we had seen already here that when one of us is at rest, in which the physical body does not require, let's say, intelligent input of the spirit at that moment, the spirit can partially, and again partially, separated from the physical body and go somewhere else. It may go somewhere else in the spiritual world, as we dream every night, or it can go and attend to an evocation here in the physical world. We have examples that has happened. It perhaps happens a lot more often than we can imagine. We incarnate when we return to the physical body after attending to an evocation, or even without an evocation, if we go and visit somewhere or someplace in the physical world, upon returning to the physical body, waking up back at our so-called conscious state, we will not remember that evocation, or you remember very vaguely that you have been somewhere, that you have spent time with such and such, but everything is be extremely foggy and not going to be able to recollect the whole event. And the reason for that, only to recap, because we covered this already, is because memory in our conscious level is something that requires a brain activity. And since the brain did not take part on that conversation, that event, upon returning, it's extremely difficult for the spirit to place that experience into the physical body. Perhaps there is not even a need to do so. So very little is actually remembered, but the effects of it, let's assume that you went over there to receive some valuable messages, valuable information, it will be kept with the eternal spirit. And when needed, we will have the intuitive remembrance of that message or that information, and you'll be able to use it. And of course, if we choose to do so in accordance to our free will. So it's not a waste of time, because the question would be, well, if I don't remember when I'm conscious, so why then receive messages that are not useful? No, they are useful. We will have that information in our spirit, and it will be retrieved upon the necessity. Now, if you choose to use it, it's a different story. Okay?
Okay.
So you continue at 51, please.
Number 51. Can we evoke the spirit whose body is still in the womb? No, because you know that during this phase, the spirit is completely confused. Incarnation only definitively takes place at the moment the child breathes. However, from the moment of conception, designated spirit is enveloped in a confusion which increases as birth approaches and which erases its self-consciousness. Thus, it cannot respond. Okay.
Okay, so I think this is a good thing for us to recap, because you had seen this before. At the time of conception, at the time that the egg of the woman reproductive cell is fertilized, the penetration of the sperm. At that moment, a spirit becomes attached to that which will be a formed body. So right at that time, there is already a spirit associated with that body. It could not be differently, right? Since the perispirit is the one that helps to form, to model the physical body in accordance to the needs of the spirit. Okay? Of course, without bypassing the laws of genetics and everything else, right? Following the biological laws, following the physical laws, there is the input of the spirit that will model that physical body in accordance to the needs of the spirit. And it starts right at conception. So right at conception, the zygote yet, there is already a spirit attached to it. In that process, as the gestation progresses, the spirit undergoes what's called a reduction period, in which it has to kind of lose its previous identity to be able to acquire a new one, to be able to fully integrate in the new reincarnation, to face all the necessary lessons without the prejudices, without the interference of its own past. And nothing happens in one moment. It's a process. There's 9 months of gestation for the formation of the body, but also for the preparation of that spirit to want to go at kind of forgiveness of previous reincarnations to integrate itself into a new reincarnation. In this process, the spirit slowly loses ability to recall its past. So it would be wise for the spirit to be able to respond to an evocation. And if it does respond to evocation, what is its spirit going to be able to retrieve and talk about? The previous reincarnation that at that right moment, it's doing the exercise, a work of leaving it behind, or the one that is about to happen, it doesn't know yet. So it doesn't make much sense to evoke a spirit whose body is still in the process of formation as an embryo or or as a fetus, right? It'll be counterproductive for that spirit, would probably interfere with that process of forgetting of the past to assimilate a completely new incarnation. And Kardec goes very careful with, I'm sorry, the spirits, see, because the spirits are answering, very careful with definitions, okay? So it says incarnation definitely takes place at the moment of the spirit birth, breathes. So incarnation is completed at birth, but the process starts at conception. Right at birth, right at conception, there is a spirit already associated with that forming body. So by all means, at the spiritist level, in my interpretation, even though it's just a zygote, it's just a modular or a bunch of cells that gonna form a body. In my conception, it's already a body that is dependent of any spirit associated to it. And I mean dependent because if that spirit lives, something happens, that fetus, that embryo, that morula will not be able to survive. And so just one more thing here. Again, every time that we speak this in every terms. Are there exceptions to the rules? There is always exception to the rules, and I'm sure somebody may say, but I know this case or that case. Yes, there is this 1 in a million, there is 1 in 100,000 that happens, like in everything else. But this is the general process of our initiation of a new life as eternal spirit and as a new reincarnation. Any questions?
Yeah, I think that it's important to mention that the exception would be a much more evolved spirit, a spirit that is coming on a mission, that has the ability to still be conscious outside of the process of the reincarnation. So, you know, that would be very rare, and even those spirits, they are much respectful of the law and of the, you know, they would come on an evocation if it is absolute necessary and relevant to the reasons behind the evocation, right? So I think it's important to mention what is the exception. The exception would never be an average spirit.
Mm.
And on the spectrum also, it may be an extremely rebellious, ignorant spirit that fights that reincarnation at all cost. And sometimes they have the leeway of have the ill will and have the free will allow them to do things that is outside of what we call normal or average. Okay.
Okay.
52.
52. Yes.
Yes.
Could a deceiving spirit respond in the place of a living person? Certainly, and this frequently happens, especially when the evoker has ulterior motives. Moreover, the evocation of living persons is only useful for psychological study. It should not be done if there is no instructive purpose involved. If the evocation of errant spirits does not always take hold to use their own expression. Such is even more the case involving incarnate ones. That is when deceiving spirits most often take their place.
Okay, so when you do an evocation, we have to have an objective, has to have a purpose. And the word very commonly used in spiritualism that I like very much myself is intention, right? What is the intention? What's your aim? Is it a personal gain? Is it just mere curiosity? Is it just mere entertainment? Is it because you believe that that spirit you're evoking has something very valuable at the moral level to contribute to you or to your group? Or is it because that spirit that we're trying to evoke could receive assistance somehow, that you sincerely believe that that spirit would benefit from a communication in a spirit center, in our case, of course. And if the communications, the evocations of a discarnated spirit who is already free from the physical body, who is already free from the ties that holds them to a specific place in this planet, does not happen with frequency, we imagine that evoking an incarnated spirit would be a lot more complicated, a lot more complex. As we said from the beginning, that spirit would have to have the temporary ability to disconnect from that physical body partially, when that physical body is some kind of rest, sleep, or some kind of trance, in kind of altered state of consciousness that will allow the spirit to partially disconnect and go. Very often, most of us are not comfortable as a spirit to leave the physical body behind. We have this fear of leaving this physical body behind for all the obvious reasons, with the difficulty that. So when we make an evocation of incarnated spirit, we are taking a big risk of having someone else taking place of that spirit and answer and act as if it was the one that you evoked. If it happens with discarnate spirits, when we evoke discarnate spirits, even more likely to happen with incarnated spirits. When the spirit presents itself, it does not bring any idea, did not present the social security number to us and say to prove that it is what we say, who or she is saying that it is. As we always say, there is no empty space. As Kardec put in this book, evoke a rock and a rock will answer. So it's a big risk that we take every time that we make an evocation. And if you see in this book, before we start an evocation, Kardec went at length at the discussion of identification of spirit, how to be wise and careful to try to identify the spirit, make sure that you're talking to the one that you evoked, right? To avoid serious problem, especially if the spirit that evokes is an incarnated person, and whatever answers comes in from that spirit may have a consequence in the life of that spirit here. Could imagine if, let's say, we evoked João in our meeting. João is sleeping, João is busy somewhere in the spiritual world, but an opportunistic spirit who doesn't like João very much for the work that he's doing, take his place and say, yeah, I'm João. And compromises João with answers, with lies, with whatever, that may have very strong consequences in his life, in his work. So when we evoke special incarnated spirits, we are taking a risk. We are taking a risk to expose that spirit to some drastic consequence, something has no fault of his or her own. There are always opportunistic spirits ready to play a game, and you have to be very careful. If we ever evoke someone, you have to make sure that you have means and reason to properly identify, and if there is any doubt whatsoever, never use it. Again, rejecting truth better than accept one lie. Questions, comments?
In our mediumship meetings, the first thing is we never evoke spirits, right? Our mediumship meeting is of assistance, and we always receive the spirits that are brought by the spiritual mentors. So we're not talking about evocation here, but talking about communications from living persons. I think I remember once in these 20 years, I don't know if you remember more than once, Selmo, that we had a living person that was in her sleep communicating. I barely remember, but I think I remember one. Do you remember more?
I remember one for sure. I think someone that we are talking about here, that's absolutely sure. And there is one that I vaguely suspect. No more than that. One for sure, I'm pretty convinced, and one that I kind of suspect, but I could never confirm. But no more than that.
Yeah, and this is in 20 years, right? Of 20, 21 years of work in the mediumship meeting in our group. So that shows how rare and how not common and not to be pursued in a sense, right?
I have a question which is related to this, but what are spirits doing if they're hanging around interfering in other communications? They have nothing to do themselves?
That's one thing. Yeah. Just imagine our incarnated life. Don't you see people there just hanging out with no interest in life besides being a disturbance to others? Don't you? I'm sure you can go through your own mind and relate. I know some people like that. It seems like they are, what I usually say, they are so damn good. They are so really clever that they can take such a good care of their own life, and still have time available to try to take care of some people's, interfere in the people's lives. There is always those spirits right over there to have some fun. And that Kardec says with some spirit, not necessarily evil, just ignorant at the time, that at the point that they don't value time wisely, and they're wasting their time trying to have fun. And we receive a lot of communication of the spirits that they literally say, well, if I have eternity ahead of me, I'll catch up later. Right now, I just want to have fun. We receive communication of the spirits saying that.
What?
No, for right now, I just want to have fun. Just want to live as if I'm still incarnate and party all the time and so forth and so on.
But are they actually in association with other spirits?
There is always associated with other spirits, right? I mean, we are surrounded by a multitude of witnesses, right? As Paulo of Tarso says, we are always surrounded with spirit according with our, again, intentions, with our ideas, with what we want to do with our life. It's going to always be an association.
I think your question, Philip, brings more questions, actually, right? Because you have spirits that are just there to disturb us because they have nothing else better to do. But there are spirits that intentionally want to disturb, right, and would use every opportunity. So the same way that there are spirits, there are incarnated beings here that want to do harm, and we see that every day in the news.
Yeah.
They go to the other side and they don't change. So any organization that is trying to work through the progress of humanity, they will try to interfere. And a mediumship meeting is a way that allows them to interfere more clearly, right? More directly. Now, that also brings the question, where is the protection of the group doing the mediumship meeting, right?
Yeah.
We are protected. We, as the spirits say, goodness always prevails over evil. If we don't allow ourselves to be drawn to their level, they have no way of interfering, right? So the protection is there, but it belongs to the spiritual world as much as it belongs to us in the physical world, right? Because sometimes we bring these companies and we allow them to come inside. It could be also a learning experience for the group. The spirits always mention that also, but you know, there is no, as also the spirit said, there's no vacuum, right? If we open ourselves to the spirit world without a serious intention, the serious spirits are not going to associate themselves to us, and the door is open to whoever wants to bring their own messages. And you know, I think we have a couple of mediums here in the study, and they can talk from their side if they have any experience, views, ideas on that.
And, hi, Joelle.
Hi, Laura.
Can you please elaborate? Because you asked for mediums to speak up.
No, I'm just said if the mediums have any experience, in this association that you have in the mediumship meetings, how you both how you prepare yourself and when the spirit comes, how you if you are able to differentiate with the spirits that are just there to distract us, or the spirits that are really, because I know we have a lot of suffering spirits, evil spirits that communicate, but there is a purpose. We need to work with them. But I'm talking about the spirits that just come to distract us, to deceive us. If you have any experiences with that in your mediumship, you got my question now?
Yeah, I completely understand now. For myself personally, I don't think that there's been one that has come intentionally just to distract. A lot that certainly don't want to be there, and certainly think that they can just go leave and be on their own again. Or maybe they think they just can come for a moment to make fun of or disturb the meeting, but then, they're there, they can't leave. You can feel that. And then as, you and Elmo speak with them and, tell them through the prayers of their families, they could be there. Then they do get help and get treatment for sure. But in having one that I believe that has intentionally come to disrupt the process, I don't think I have had personal experience with that.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Renato, anything to say here? No.
I was gonna just stay quiet because I'm in a park with you, Manuela.
Okay.
So, but if I mean, I can share because you know what happened, right? So, I remember it was like a few Mondays ago. I'm not sure. It was after a very difficult psychophony, and I was really tired after the communication. And I gotta confess, I totally lost the concentration in the meeting. And when I was getting back to my focus, I kind of started to hearing a message, and I thought it was going to be a psychography. but it wasn't in English, it was something else. And I didn't know what was it. So I started to make, to write it down, what I was understanding. And it looks like French, but I don't know how to speak French, at least on this incarnation. So I was just like writing, mumbling stuff. And I remember I wrote like maybe 4 or 5 phrases or whatever. And then once I get my concentration back, I got this thought, you're wasting your time. And then I was like, oh, that's what it was. And then I stopped writing and just, get back to my focus and getting back to the meeting. And then we spoke afterwards. And then, it was just someone just, taking advantage that I was not totally focused and concentrate and wasting my time, because I could have, praying and interacting with the group, doing whatever more useful than just writing mumbo jumbo that is not useful anymore. And even if it was French, and if I could speak French or whatever it wasn't, what's the point? For us, they're only speaking English. So I couldn't cut up that when it was happening because I wasn't focused and tired. So it happened to me, and so that's what happened.
Thanks, Renato. Yeah, very, very good. I forgot about that, but it was a good example. Yeah. Elmo.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the spirits who try to interfere with the work, the spirits would communicate only for the fun of it, try to have fun in the communication, or spirits will come in and try to disturb the work or try to attack someone else or the whole group, as very often it happens. The work that you do is the work of assistance of needy spirits. And could you tell me if those spirits are not in tremendous need of assistance? So those spirits are indeed allowed to come in because they are in need of assistance. Those are the ones that perhaps need the most assistance of them all. So the question really was, so why they are allowed to come in? Well, they are allowed to come in because that's the work that we do. We do the work of rescue, of rescue those who have received, who are now in the position of being helped. Naturally, they will refuse, they will reject, but they are in a position to be helped if something at all changed in their mind. And very often, our work as the incarnate part of the much bigger part of this whole process of the Spiritual Center Mediumship meeting is to try to create, to the best of our ability, a little window of opportunity for the rest of the work of the spiritual world to take over and assist those spirits. So you receive the spirits that come in to attack us, to attack one of us, to attack the whole group, just to have fun because they have nothing better to do with their lives. Those are the spirits in need that we try to assist to the best of our abilities. And one comment over here, one question that I'm curious nobody answered is, what does Kardec means by, moreover, the evocation of living persons only used for psychological studies? I did some digging on that. I didn't find much. Okay, and my conclusion is spirit would incarnate spirits who are suffering some kind of what we could call psychological / psychiatric problems, that there is no real pathology with our sciences yet. That is, let's say, a big question mark that nobody can answer, is why this guy suffering like that. That may be, and we do believe, and we believe to be of a spiritual nature that could be helped in an evocation. Okay.
Yeah, and always reminding everyone that the spirits that are brought to the the mentors allow to come to our mediumship meetings are spirits that can effectively be helped, right? So spirits that cannot be helped, that they have no intention of, don't have even an inkling of changes, they are not brought to the meeting. Again, unless there is these interferences that happens for the group to learn and for the mediums to learn.
Okay, 53.
53. Are there drawbacks to evoking living persons? It is not always free of danger, but it depends on their condition. If they are ill, you might increase their misery.
So I think we already covered that, saying that, we're taking a big risk of exposing those spirits to some attack. You expose that spirit to the danger of having their name used by a spirit perhaps doesn't like them or just want to have fun. But there is also the danger of a spirit who may not be in proper condition to do so physically and would compromise the spirit. And then we question, but well, if not is what they are allowed to do. I don't have that answer. But the only thing that I go back is we have a free will. And the spirit may insist upon receiving that call, the telephone rang, the evocation takes place, they insist on doing so, they may do so and they may compromise their own health. But that to me is the least of all. The physical one is the least of all. I think the danger of being replaced by other spirits are much greater, much likely to happen if that spirit is not in condition to attend.
Okay.
Okay.
54. When is evoking a living person inappropriate? You should not evoke extremely young children, persons who are gravely ill, or infirm-aged individuals. In other words, it is inappropriate whenever the body is seriously debilitated. The abrupt suspension of the intellectual faculties during the awakening state could also present a danger if the person at the time required all his or her mental agility.
Okay, so that is the very common sense question, right? What other spirits are telling us here that partial separation of the body from the perispirit, partial, is not completely free of some expenditure of energy, neither going out nor returning. Okay. And someone is already gravely ill, someone is already extremely debilitated with no reserve of energies. It could be a toll on that physical body. What we do without even realize that we are doing, like getting up in the morning, wake up, sit on the table, get up and walk, is almost unconscious. We do so with tremendous tranquility, right? Let any one of us spend 2-3 weeks in bed sick, and all of a sudden the physical therapy comes to the room and say, "Okay, let's get up now," and you see how hard it is because you don't have that reserve anymore because you're extremely ill, and it takes a toll. What we do almost unconscious, it becomes a hardship, someone to do as easy as standing up from bed. Because we need energies to do everything that we do, including that separation and return to the body. There is an expenditure of energy, and if you have no reserve, that energy may be necessary for something more important than participating in an evocation. So you need to be careful who evoke that point. And with young children, even more important. We know that up to 7 years of age or so, again, it's not exactly science, right? The spirit is still in the processes of assimilating itself to this new reincarnation. That's why we have our invisible friends. That's why we, at a young age, we have a much greater window, so to say, to the spiritual world. And we're still in the process of really integrating ourselves to this new reincarnation. And the evocation may derail this process, may complicate it, may make it more difficult. So of course, it's just plain common sense. Do not evoke spirits of young children. I would go on my own and say, even up to adolescence, unless necessary, really necessary, as Kardec put over here, only useful for psychological studies. I would not do it. And someone is ill, is already in need of put up some reservation of energies. You do not want to, I'm not going to say waste, but expend that energy with something that they are not ready, physically ready to deal at that moment. Just pure common sense. Okay.
You're talking about young children here, and I was here really, I was wondering here, of course, I never heard of a case, but when you talk about children up to 7 years where they, they live half here and half there are all those cases of young children that Dr. Ian Stevenson made the most important research, which is the recollection of the previous existence, right? And I never heard any case of these children being invoked, but I would wonder if that would be a psychological study, right? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here, Elmo. What do you think?
I totally agree. And but the interesting for those ones, the vocation are really necessary, right? They talk on their own about who they were in the previous life, as if they are actually living that physical life so clearly. But yeah, I haven't heard, I don't know if Dr. Ian Stevenson have done that himself. I know he interviewed those spirits, but not in an evocation level. Then I'll sit next to them and talk to them, yeah.
No, he never mentioned any mediumship meeting on his study, so that's not part of his research.
They didn't even believe in it.
Yeah, no. I was just wondering, if any of those, because I know a couple of Brazilians that worked on the continuation of his studies at Duke University. I'm not sure if any of those ever tried that or thought about that. I may ask Dr. Alexander Almeida one day.
Yeah, what? It just hit me now that would be interesting, if it's possible, is go back to those spirits who up to certain age had that open window and then it closes. If later in life they still have some recollection, if they truly believe that what happened to them was previous reincarnation, how do they deal with that as an adult person living a more fully integrated life in the physical?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I know one of these children, which were not Dr. Ian Stevenson. I think it was the one that Carol Bauman.
Carol Bauman, yeah.
Yeah, that he's. I think he's in his 20s now, and he's interested in learning more, or he's researching a little bit. So maybe something will come out of it.
Yep.
Excuse me, what was the name of that author? Carol Bowman?
Carol Bauman, yes. And the
Bowman.
Yeah, and the spirit is Leininger, Leini. Sorry, the living person, Leininger, the child. I don't. Leininger, Lein, G-E-R, Leininger, and there's another N there.
That's
I know
okay.
because, yeah, I know because at the time my boss was Leininger also, so it was funny, it was the same name. So I never forgot. But she was in I think on the third or fourth Spiritist Symposium. She presented the case there. It was, remember that, right, Elmo?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just a curiosity here, and I know we haven't heard any of this, but surely will be an interesting field of research.
Okay, number 55.
Thank you.
During evocations of living persons, does their body become tired because of the work of the spirit, even though the body is absent? One individual who had been evoked affirmed that his body had become tired by responding. My spirit is like a balloon attached to a post. My body is the post that is shaken by the jerking movements of the balloon.
Okay. So as we spoke before here, that is an expander of energies. Remember that physical body is attached to that spirit by at least one major tie, likely more than one. And every activity that the spirit goes through, the body feels it. So a spirit who was busy doing a lot of hard work in the spiritual world while the body was resting may wake up feeling that it did not rest enough. And unlike the analogy that the spirit made, that is if it's a balloon, the spirit is a balloon tied up to a pole, and every time that the balloon moves around, it creates a response to the pulse, and the pulse shake. And that makes true what we talked about, that someone who's gravely ill should not provide communication because of that expander of energy. Again, we are connected, we are attached. And everything that happens to one, it has this two ways road. What affects the spirit affects the body, and vice versa.
Mike,
Go ahead.
I have a question here. The statement says, even though the body is absent, what does that mean? The body being absent?
Yeah, that let's say I go to bed, I go to sleep, okay, and somewhere in another part of the world they make an evocation, and I, the spirit, receive that call and choose to attend to it. My physical body will not be a part of the experience that I will have while the physical body is resting. I'll be partially connected. So I'll leave my body sleeping here in New York City, and I go to Brazil and attend to an evocation.
Okay.
The body is not being a part of it. And that is the reason that I said in the beginning that we don't really recall, we don't really remember at the conscious level all the experiences that we had, because the brain, the physical brain, was not a part, did not take part on that event. So there is no input in the brain of what's happened there, because the brain was absent, so to say, at that moment.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, 56.
Okay. Since the evocation of living persons may be inappropriate when done without taking precautions, isn't there also danger in evoking a spirit who does not know if it is incarnate and who might be in some unfavorable state of affairs? No, the circumstances are not the same. He will only answer if the conditions are right. Moreover, haven't I already said that before making the evocation, you should ask if it is possible?
Yes, so kind of like goes here with a question that is it's very unlikely to be able to happen, right? Very unlikely that a spirit, especially if an older chronological age of the incarnated spirit, now above at least the teenage years, definitely would be very sure of being incarnate. It's not really imaginable that in regular, normal situations, that a spirit had already conditioned him or herself to that physical, that reincarnation, not be aware of that incarnation. And again, I go back maybe after 7 years of age, when we are transiting still between the two planes, you may have some questioning at a time. As John just said, some spirits rarely seems to be still more aware of his previous ID than the present one as the no reincarnation. But in situations like that, the spirits will not allow the communication to take place. Or the incarnated spirit will not even be able to receive that call, that evocation. So it's the answer here is no, very definite, no. But because personally I'm not believer of absolutes when dealing with spirituality, there is always an exception to the rule. I would say yes, no. Maybe 1 in a billion, in case there's something crazy like that happened. Well, we had seen, people being born with 2 heads, how often that happened, right? So I don't say an absolutely no, but if the spirits here answer no, I'll go with them. Something that not happen, the circumstances does not allow it to happen.
Okay,
Okay.
57. When during inconvenient moments we feel irresistibly sleep coming over us, is it because we are being evoked somewhere? It could be, certainly, but most often it should be regarded as a simple physical need, whether because the body needs rest or because the spirit needs its freedom. We knew a lady, a medium, who one day got the idea to evoke the spirit of her grandson, who was sleeping in the same room. She confirmed his identity by his language, familiar expressions, and a precise report on some things that had happened at boarding school. Then something else happened to confirm it even further. The medium's hand suddenly stopped mid-sentence, and she couldn't write anymore. At that moment, the child was stirring half awake on the cot. He soon went back to sleep, and she continued the conversation without interruption. The evocation of the living persons, when done under proper conditions, incontestably proves the distinct activity of the spirit and the body, and therefore the existence of an intelligent principle that is independent of matter.
Very interesting, right?
Yeah.
One thing that Kardec is always sure to remind us, and I think we in our Spirit Center are very sure to reinforce, is that when dealing with spirituality for us incarnate, we must rule out all the possible causes before we jump into it. It's a spirit, it's an obsessor, it's whatever dealing with the spiritual. You have to rule out any possible physical cause. Okay. So could it be when I'm feeling some kind of tired, unusual tiredness that you don't have at that time because somebody's evoking me and requesting that I go to rest so I can go and attend? Because that's one of the questions that we answered before, right? When God asked the spirits if we could evoke an spirit, an incarnated spirit in a awake state, on a fully conscious state? And the answer is yes. The spirit may receive that strong call for the spiritual world. At that moment, usually, if the spirit seeks to attend, it will feel tired. The physical body feel tired, and we'll say, you take a nap. It may be a very short nap. In that moment, that the physical body does not require the intelligent input of the spirit because it's at rest, the spirit can go and attend to an evocation. Does it mean that every time that during the day, during my normal activities, I suddenly feel kind of burned out and I really feel that I need to take a nap or go to sleep? Is it because I'm being evoked? And the answer very, very clear says it could be. But most often it should be regarded as a simple physical need. Why is that? Because it's the more likely to happen. Okay, I didn't drink my coffee today. I need to be caffeinated yet. I ate too much sugar. It's extremely hot. Any possible. I didn't sleep well last night. I have sleep apnea and I forgot to put my CPAP machine on. Or didn't have my CPAP machine. I mean, rule out any possible physical cause before you jump into any spiritual etiology for that sun tiredness. When you rule everything out, yeah, could be. It could be. You have to be careful. In this case, very interesting, of lady who is evoking her own grandson and live in the same household, that it shows here in the very beginning of the spiritism. We didn't have all those books to guide us, to provide us with assistance, because for us going through these books, studying this book, we would not do that, right? We know better. Leave the grandson sleeping. He needs his rest to go to school in the morning. It's not appropriate to be evoked unless, again, that is a psychological need. Unless we really believe that would be for the benefit of that spirit, we are advised not to do so. But before those books have been published, we had no guidance. And that shows to us the importance and the beauty of this doctrine to help us on how to use our mediumship. There is a lady pushing the grandson to do psychographies when he should be really sleeping, be full of energy in the morning for its regular activities. And again, it shows us, this Kardec puts me here, the relationship of the physical and the perispirits being somewhat absolutely related, and at the same time, somewhat in the perispirit, somewhat independent to act on its own. Okay.
Okay.
285.
Yeah.
We
Human
finish it.
telegraphy. Human telegraphy, 285. Can two persons evoking each other simultaneously transmit their thought and communicate? Yes, and this human telegraphy will someday be a universal means of communication. Why can't it be practiced at present? It already is by some, but not by many. Men and women must purify themselves more so that their spirit is freer of matter. A further reason why evocation must be made in God's name. Until then, it will be restricted to pure souls and to those who are dematerialized, something that is quite rare in the current state of Earth's inhabitants.
So human telegraphy, basically the ability to communicate via thought, right? By the way, all communication is done via thought. but because we are incarnate, we need to dress that thought with something, with words, with a language, with sounds, in order to be able to send our thought to someone else. So when you are hearing me right now, you are hearing my thoughts dressed with vocal, with words that you are able to receive because our physical body imposes limitations for us to communicate via thought. In the spiritual world, you communicate via thought. Most of us doesn't know, so we speak unnecessarily. Can it happen? The spirit response, yes, it happens, not very common, not very often. But it leaves clear over here that the potential is there, is here for us to do so, that it could actually interact via thought. And I think that in the unconscious or even subconscious, whatever the proper word may be, we do more often than we realize. During the day, you do your normal activities of the sun, you start thinking of a loved one. I may start thinking of my daughter now in Georgia. Oh, how Kayla's doing, and I send her a quick text or call her, say, wow, that's interesting. I was just thinking about you. I was just about to call you because I'm having this nagging pain on my shoulder here. What do you think? So we had a telepathic interaction because we care for one another, because we had that pathway of connection via thought already established by our relationship. And often we are able to communicate via thought in a way that is completely above our conscious level, below our conscious level, which way you want to look at it. We can always imagine that in other worlds where the physical body much less dense, where the perispirit is much more spiritualized, therefore will form bodies that are less dense, that is also less physical, it's still material, that their physical body would be less of a wall impeding the communication of thought. So it could happen here. Also, be careful that we are not disturbing anyone. Be careful not to be disturbed by anyone. But we can imagine that eventually, or today, in more of the words, that is happening rather commonly, but we are already able to do it, which is a good sign of progress. But matter is still a great obstacle. Questions, comments?
I think today, with all the literature that came after Kardec, we are much more aware of the communication through thought and the by the messages that we received from all the spirits through the mediums. At that time of Kardec, I think this was something groundbreaking, right? The idea of communicating by thought, and I don't know if we had any idea at that time of that.
There was a lot of exploration of this, but purely at the physical level, so to say, right? The ability of the brain making those communications. There's some scientists already considering and exploring that possibility, but I think was limited to the material. It's the brain that does everything. And with Kardec, we go beyond the brain and see that indeed the communication is done by the spirit. As right now, the individual, this speaker, it's almost the eternal spirit that thinks. But Elmo, the eternal spirit, to be able to pass my thoughts through, I have to dress it with things that can be received by the old incarnated spirits out there. Okay, we leave evocation behind. Finally, I think was very used, not only the topic incarnation, that's the interesting thing that I was reading as I was reading this, is that the topic is evocation indeed, and we concentrate on the topic evocation, but at the same time, it opened windows for us to explore so many aspects of the spirit. Things that are covered in the Spirit's book, of course, everything's covered in the Spirit's book. That is useful for our understanding of ourselves a little bit more. And I think this is the next chapter that deals with questions that may be addressed in Spirit, covers quite a bit of that also, especially and also in regard to moral aspects of our growth. So even though it's something that we do not practice, evocation, that clearly my conclusion, I think the conclusion of everyone would be that there is nothing really wrong with evocation. It's not a no-no, but it has very limited use and have to be used with tremendous care, not only of discarnate, but especially with incarnate spirits. We don't want to demonize evocation, absolutely on the contrary, we want to eliminate any taboo concerning the topic, that everything has its purpose, everything can be used, but has to be used with tremendous care for the risk that it possesses in terms of evocation, not only for us, but for the ones that we evoke. And always think in terms of objectives. What is the objective of this evocation? How can we benefit? How can, more important to that spirit, benefit from it? Putting everything on a scale of pros and cons, risks and benefits. If the benefits by far outweighs the risks, then yes, we could go ahead and proceed with evocations. But just being always very careful. Is there any question regarding evocations? Anything that was not answered so far? Because I'm gonna leave it behind. Okay.
Okay. Preliminary observations. 286. We can never be too careful about the manner in which we question spirits, and especially about the nature of questions themselves. We must consider two aspects of such questions, form and scope. As for form, they should be addressed clearly and precisely and should not be too complex. Another significant point, no less important, is the order in which they should be posed. For a subject that requires a series of questions, it is essential that they methodically link together, with each proceeding logically from the one before it. In this way, spirits respond much more easily and clearly than if we were to act at random, skipping from one subject to another without transition. That is why it is a good idea to prepare questions beforehand, but during the session, others may be inserted according to the circumstances. Besides, such preparatorial work will allow the questions to be drawn up more calmly and will be a sort of anticipatory evocation, as we have stated. which the spirit might have watched and prepared itself to address. We will notice that very often the spirit responds to certain questions before they are even asked, which shows that it already knew about them beforehand. The scope of the question requires even more serious attention because often the nature of the questioning is what elicits a correct or erroneous response. There are certain questions that spirits cannot and should not answer for reasons unknown to us, and it would therefore be futile to insist. However, the questions we should be most careful to avoid are those that test the spirit's perspicacity. It is often said that if something is obvious, spirits should know about it, but it is precisely those questions to which we already know the answers, or which we are able to clarify by ourselves, that they do not bother to answer. This distrust offends them, and nothing satisfactory will result from it. Don't we often see examples of the same thing amongst ourselves? Do very knowledgeable individuals who are aware of their own worth like to respond to foolish questions aimed at testing them as if they were school children? The desire to make some person an adherent is no reason for spirits to have to satisfy idle curiosity. They know that sooner or later the person will be convinced, and the way this is done is not always the way we might suppose. Consider a serious person who is occupied with worthwhile and serious matters, constantly being bothered by a child's puerile questions, and you will be able to see what highly evolved spirits think about all the foolishness asked of them. This is, of course, does not mean that we cannot obtain worthwhile instruction and especially excellent advice from spirits, but that they respond better or worse according to their knowledge, their interest in us, the affection they feel toward us, and finally, our purpose for inquiring of them and the usefulness with which they regard the subject. However, if we limit ourselves by thinking that they are more capable than others of informing us about questions concerning this world, they will not regard us with much sympathy. From then on, they will visit us only hurriedly, and often according to their degree of imperfection, they will be in a bad mood for having been needlessly inconvenienced.
Okay. One thing that we can notice, um, in general, when Kardec speaks of spirits, he in this case particularly speaks of spirit of a little bit more elevated caliber, moral caliber, and intellectual as well, right? It's not agree with the average ignorant spirits that we are right now. And this, of course, is associated with evocation, of course, also, right? If we follow the Spirit's book, we can see there how Kardec is very careful in creating a sequence of questions that follows the topic, that develops the topic very consistently with the questioning. It doesn't go all over the place. It doesn't ask about the weather and at the same time ask what's the results of the game. You know, if you're talking about the weather, you continue with the topic of the weather until you're exhausted all the possible questions before it jumps into sports. And then we'll develop the topic of sports and continue on the topic, exhausted that topic, and move on to something else. Not jumping around like crazy. The spirits, as we have said, the more elevated the spirits, one, they are very busy. Two, they are extremely objective. Do not waste words. Very frugal with answering the question, very objective to the point in answering those questions. If the question is a pure yes or no, that's what you're gonna get, yes or no. Do you want to know why? I said, then you're gonna have to ask why. Do you want to know if there is exception to the rules? Then you're gonna have to ask, are there exceptions? And they will answer question by question by question. And that's what Kardec suggests to us here, that you have to, first of all, it's an evocation, right? Because you have to prepare yourself, then you have to be prepared to deal with someone else, or to how to question someone else. If a reporter, is going to this interview shows, those night shows where they invite someone to come for an interview, we see how the reporter, how the person that show is prepared to deal with that person that invited you. Now, so I'd say if it's an actor or an actress, they some of the work that actor or actress has done in the past. They will know what's the present work that he or she is doing. They'll know a little bit of what is available in terms of their private life, because unfortunately, their private life is not so private, right? And they have to do their homework before they receive that person for the interview. A good professional will do that. Why would not be the same with us if we're going to evoke a more elevated spirits that you want to question? They have to know something that would help us. We have to do our work before. And I like what Kardec puts over here. You must consider two aspects of such questions, form and scope. As a form says, the question should be addressed clearly and precisely. Again, very objective. What is it that you want to know? You put that in a very clear and objective way. Don't go around the bushes because they don't have time for that. The same way that they do not go around the bush, they're extremely objective. They expect the same from us. And precisely, that's what I want. And simple. Don't try to complicate it, because then they're just not gonna ask you for clarification. The order, as again I said, explore the topic. Don't put the effect before the cause. You have to have a cause, effect, consequence. Follow a normal, not only chronological, but reasonable sequence of events. Now, don't ask the consequence of something that did not happen yet. Right? You have to have that proper format. Try not to offend the intelligence of higher order spirits. Do not think that you can fool them to answer things that one is not over their scope to answer, or very often happens to get them to give us answers for questions or for problems that it's our responsibility to figure out on our own. Don't ask them to do our homework for us. Do not ask them to do our work for us. They will not like it, they will not respond it, and they may quit that interview at that moment, so to say. Do not test the spirit. Identification of the spirits is important, as we said. If you're not absolutely sure that when we evoke Martin Luther King, that the one present is indeed Martin Luther King, don't be asking him what was the social security number when he was incarnated here. What was the name of your wife? What was the name of your... They're not gonna go for that. Do you want to identify Martin Luther King? Identify him by the ideology, by his character, by the way he provided proper answers, and we kind of have to make that analogy with previous interview with Martin Luther King when he was incarnate. We do have those available to us to make that comparison, but don't put them to a test or interrogation as if they are guilty, you have to prove their innocence. We don't like it. I don't like it. No one like it. And we are not to do to others what we will not like others to do to us in the same situation. Do not waste that time. Wiser spirits expect to answer wise questions, right? I'm not gonna go to a medical doctor and challenge him. Do you know how many fingers do we have in our hand? And they laugh at us. If you ask a 3, 4, 5 years old, that's a proper question. You test the ability to identify what's a finger, for them to see if that 3 or 4 years old is able to count. Very good question. But you're not going to place that for a medical doctor. It shows our stupidity, and it shows that we are trying to have fun or something with that doctor. They're not going to answer. They're not going to like it. If you're going to address, let's say, Einstein, something regarding physics, do a little reading on physics first. Do not ask something completely stupid that makes no sense or that is extremely trivial, because for triviality in physics, again, I'm being very specific here, we go to an average spirit, not to a doctors of doctors in that field. Wise spirits require wise questioning. Wise spirits require a wise interviewer. Do not waste their time. They will not like it. They will abort very often that communication and not waste their time. So have that sequence. Be prepared. Do your homework. Just like the interview on TV, will do a little research before the questioning. We should do the same thing. Questions?
I was watching this week a lecture by Dr. Desio Iandoli, and there is something here, right? That the spirits already show respond to certain questions before they're even asked, right? And he was telling his experience with transcommunication. The communication by through devices from spirits, right?
Technology,
like
yes.
Dr. Sonia Rinaldi is the forefront specialist in this, right? If you heard of her. So he said that he was with Dr. Marlene Nobri and Dr. Ivenia Prado, and they went to have a meeting with her, with Dr. Sonia Rinaldi, and receiving some communications through the machine. I don't know what machine it was. It was some time ago, like 10 years ago. And he said that Dr. Ivenia had just lost a protege of her, a student that had died, not by any suicide or anything like that, just died of an accident or a disease, I don't know. And Dr. Ivenia asked if this pupil or her could communicate, and he said that she really did communicate, and it came through the I always forgot the name in English, transcommunication, or whatever the device there. But he said that one thing that was funny is that when they listened to the recordings, the answer came before the question. So the timing of the questions and the answers are different, and let him wonder, you know, time in the spiritual world, of course, different from time in the physical world. And also one thing that he is convinced, but he cannot prove, is that the transcommunication itself happens because Dr. Sonia Rinaldi is a medium, not because there is a possibility of the transcommunication. I think that she does through a physical, she's a medium of physical effects. But that, again, it's his guess. But I thought it was interesting when I saw here that certain questions they answered before they were even asked.
Yeah, because if we do our preparation, if you do a research, and we do the diligent work of putting that proper sequence of question and everything else, and that spirit is somewhat already connected to the group or to the individual, to the evoker in this case, not to the medium, that spirit receives their thoughts before the verbal question was placed, right? And if that homework was done, let's say, in the previous week, you know, we have our meetings at Thursdays, and on Sunday I start to prepare myself, doing my research. I open the book and read a little bit about this or that person and what question I'm going to ask. I might already be integrated with that spirit, and it's already know the questions that I have prepared to answer and be ready to answer even before I open my mouth. And that is interesting in a instrumental transcommunication, that they may indeed be ahead of the game. That's so interesting. That by the time that the written or spoken question comes out, the answer is already there in an instrument, being it tape recorder or in a printer or whatever means of any means of communication that we have in our technology today.
Okay, I think we stop here, right, Helma?
The top three, stop here, yes. It's a good discussion, thank you.
Yes, so next Sunday, we'll have our Q&A session. This month has 5 Sundays. So on the 5th Sunday, Renato will be presenting us with a special lecture. It's going to be, I'm in a mediumship meeting, now what? Through the lens of a medium, his presentation of his experience as a medium in a mediumship meeting, and we'll talk a little bit about mediumship. So we'll be back to this subject in a couple of weeks, but next week we have the Q&A. So please bring your questions. And also for those that missed the lecture yesterday, God According to Spiritism, by this, I forgot his name, this young Brazilian guy, was really wonderful and really worth watching. If you from Gustavo Silveira, God According to Spiritism. It's a very interesting lecture, and presented by someone who's 28 years old, and it was his first ever presentation in English. So I thought it was fascinating. It was really very, very good subject, a very difficult subject to approach, right? You start with the definition of God according to Spiritism and how Spiritism views God. I don't know if any of you have watched it, but
what is his name again?
Gustavo Silveira. Okay, so I highly recommend. It's on our on the United States Spiritist Federation website, and also the program this morning on initiation into Spiritism by Susana Simões on this carnation was very good. Also, I highly recommend. Yes, Marlene watched it, and she's giving us the thumbs up there. Okay, just the programs that are out there for us to to watch and really worth. Okay, Elmo, back to you.
We close. Thank everyone. I think it was a good discussion today. And Carol, can you make a final prayer for us?
Sure. Thank you very much, Elmo, John, and everyone.
Thank you.
Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together today as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Medium's book. We are studying Chapter 25, which we have finished, and moving on to Chapter 26. We have learned that a spirit becomes associated or connected at the moment of conception to an embryo, and it is preparing itself for the incarnation. It is not necessary, nor is there a need to evoke that spirit, which is in a confused state. It is in transition to become a live being. We receive suffering spirits during our Monday evening mediumship meeting to assist them. The mentors bring these spirits that can be helped. The others are not let in. Therefore, we are always protected whenever we do our meetings on Monday evening. It is a great gift, and we have received many incredible communications. Not always easy, some are very difficult, but we are grateful that there can be assistance provided. We do not evoke children, young children, especially in their early development stage between ages 1 and 7, or weak and the ill, seriously individuals at this time. They don't have the energy, nor do they have the capacity to necessarily respond. It is not that we need to do this, therefore not advised. We give thanks for what we have received today, for the guidance of the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits who are assisting us. We are grateful to receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within, knowing that we are never alone, that there always is a resource. When we do ask for assistance, it will be provided as needed. We are grateful for all that we have received in terms of blessings on the level of the mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional arenas of our life. May we continue with our prayers, with our studies, and our mindfulness throughout the week, doing the best that we can to improve each and every day, and to proceed to use these lessons as we can to be of service to others, to be of greater assistance and charity in our journey on the physical plane. May we be good stewards of the earth as well, and may we assist our loved ones, listening more intently to them, helping as we can. May we humbly ask now for safety and protection as we go forth to family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we be grateful that we can be beacons of light for them. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within during this day, during the week, and continuing throughout. We close humbly now and accept the blessings and give great thanks for what we have received. Go forth now in peace and in gratitude. So be it.